Kentucky plays Georgia. They're supposed to get blown out, right? I mean, Clemson lost to Georgia by 31 points. Kentucky just lost to South Carolina 31-6 at home in Lexington. This is obvious. Georgia's going to beat the color out of their jerseys. Kentucky loses by 1 point. It's interesting. What can Clemson learn from Kentucky versus Georgia, not only for the Georgia game, but just moving forward? I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Welcome to the channel. I am your humble host. If anyone ever tells you that they're humble, they're probably not. I'm glad you're here. I talk Clemson football. I talk college football. So if that's your sort of thing, I hope you'll subscribe. It is free. So last week, I left with my family, went to the coast of South Carolina, lower part of the state, was hanging out with my family and a few of my son's friends. It was a great time. And we tuned in to the Georgia-Kentucky game in that beautiful little Airbnb we had. A family friend of ours, they offered us an Airbnb, and it was great. It was fantastic. So I'm nestled in my chair to watch Georgia absolutely rip the logo off the side of Kentucky's helmet. Remember, Kentucky just lost to South Carolina 31-6. Same South Carolina team the week before, they almost lost to Old Dominion at home. So this is like a no-brainer. Georgia's going to beat the trash out of Kentucky. The game kicks off, and it was just one of those normal games where you're like, okay, Kentucky has the dopamine rush. They're playing tough right now, but we all know what's going to happen. Georgia's going to lower the boom on this Kentucky team that pays like what? I don't know. $8 million for 7 and 8 wins a year? I mean, that's how important it is to them up there in Lexington. We got to have our 7 and 8 wins, so we got to just pay tons of money for this. And it didn't happen. Kentucky played Georgia like I mean, they came out and played them extremely well. Now, if you look at prior history, a few years ago when Georgia played in Lexington, the final score was like 16-6. Kentucky played them really, really well. A few years before that, I want to say it was a close game. Now, a lot of Georgia fans and a lot of people in just the media talks about how Kirby Smart and Stoops are friends. So you could say, well, Kirby didn't want to humiliate his friend, but he's humiliated him before. You could say it's just SEC play because, it means more. But I don't think so. I came away from that game with all of these excuses, with all of these trains of thought that you could have. If you're a SEC fan, if you're a Kentucky fan, if you're just someone who loves college football, like yours truly, the thought that I came away with is, how did they do it, and what can Clemson learn from it? Now, I want to pause there before I go any farther, and I'm going to tell you this. Some of you, after that Appalachian State game, you have moved on from Georgia. It's as though Georgia never happened. And if you're the type who's just watching Clemson football and you love it and you're like, I hate they lost to Georgia, but I just enjoy this as a pastime. Honestly, I'm not being sarcastic here. I don't blame you if you don't care. I don't blame you if you're just like, hey, I go to the games, whether they're good or they're bad. I'm going to pull for my team. But I really don't care if they get over the hump. I just use this as a pastime. Now, I agree with you on part of that. I don't let it wreck my life if Clemson loses. Like, I have this channel and get upset about certain things, but like, if you could see me after I turn off the camera, I'm like, man, that was really crappy. I go to bed and go to sleep. Like, my week's not ruined by it. But I do have a talk show here to talk about Clemson and how competitive they are. So some of you, you've given me the thought that Dabo is playing 4D chess. He didn't really care about the Georgia game. He just wanted to get to conference play because he knows that if he wins out his conference, he goes to the playoff. I said that really weird. Playoff. What's wrong with me? Playoff. All he has to do is win his conference. You're 100% right. And the ACC is trash. What's the other good ACC team? Miami? I mean, and the U has looked like they're back before, but save the bells and whistles. But let's just say that that's the plan. He didn't care if Clemson got the crap beat out of him by Georgia. That was it. Others have said he didn't want to show his playbook to Georgia. But then the very next week, he showed his playbook to the rest of his conference when he opened up the playbook against a team he didn't have to open up the playbook. Either way. But the thought that I have a hair in my mouth. God, that's annoying. The thought that I have is that it's a little different. What did Kentucky do differently than Clemson? Well, Kentucky had already accepted they were supposed to get trashed. Heads were going to roll. They were going to lose. They were going to be embarrassed. So Kentucky came in and said, look, we know we're playing Goliath. We know there's no one in this stadium who's sober who believes that we can win this ball game. So they came out. They were not scared of Georgia. They were not playing to get into the playoff. And so they went after Georgia. And it shocked Georgia that they kept going after them, that they continued to just grab them by the throat and say, we're not honored to play you, Georgia. We're not honored to be here. This is a game that was scheduled for this week. We know we have nothing to lose, so we're not going to play to lose. We're going to play to win and upset you. And that is, to me, the difference between Clemson and Kentucky with their approach to Georgia. Now, today, some of you may give me a great excuse, rebuttal, whatever, thought, approach, all that good stuff, that Clemson has a lot to play for. And you're right. Again, all Clemson has to do is win their conference, and they're in the playoff. You are right. You're 100% right. I'm more concerned about if we get to that playoff. Because you won't be able to hide from Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Texas, Oregon, Ole Miss. You're not going to be able to hide from them. You may want to. I'm just concerned that if Clemson gets into those games, that they go back into their shell. They didn't have to score 56 points on Appalachian State in that first half. Yes, it was fun. Yes, it was wonderful. But if you're someone like me, and God help you if you are, sitting there going, why didn't we go after Georgia like this? Why? We're going to show the playbook next week and get someone that we don't have to. Let's be honest with ourselves. We don't need to take this NC State game lightly, but I am blown away by how underwhelming NC State really is. No trash talk here. I'm being honest. I said that I felt like NC State would be a better team this year, and I felt like the question would be on their defense. Folks, it's across the board. I'm beginning to think they need to look at their offensive coordinator and question if he's the man for the job. He has the weapons. They're struggling. They're struggling against La Tech. They struggled against Western Carolina. They played Tennessee, and it was laughable. So my point in all of this is that we don't need to take North Carolina State lightly, but Clemson doesn't have to show their playbook against them. They didn't have to show their playbook against Stanford, and you're like, show it. They don't. If that's the excuse for Georgia, and you're trying to conceal some magic plays that you have, you don't have to show it against Appalachian State, NC State, all the states, Stanford, Florida State. Florida State is in such disarray. It's hilariously bad. Wake Forest, Virginia Tech, stop me when I get to a good team. I think Clemson plays scared when they play big teams now. That's the point. And Coach Sweeney knows that he can come out and he can talk up a lot of you fans, because he knows that if and when you get too irritated, All he has to do is talk about the past and tell you that you expect too much from him. And guess what? You will feel bad about it. Now, Coach Sweeney has done a lot for Clemson, and I'm not zeroing in on the guy and trying to take him out, try to destroy his character and be unthankful for what he's done. But folks, I'm just telling you, he's a big boy. He's paid over $200,000 per week to coach a game. He's doing well. He can handle it. So I just don't buy it. Clemson can learn from Kentucky to go after a team that supposedly, okay, not supposedly, they are better than Kentucky. Clemson is better than Kentucky. I know I just ticked off some of you Kentucky fans, some of you SEC fans, some of you're SEC fans. You pull for a team, but you pull for the SEC because you know your team's not really going to compete. So what you do is you keep a t-shirt or maybe a sweater or pullover, and it's the color of one of the teams, and just in case they're good in the SEC, you can wear it and talk about the SEC. But no one ever stops to ask you, well, hold on, is this your team you pull for? I'll never forget I had a Kentucky fan talk trash to me right after Clemson won the national championship. Talk trash to me. He saw my Clemson hat on. He said, boy, Alabama's going to get y'all this year. I said, oh, really? Really? And I wasn't being a jerk. I didn't even see any Kentucky garb on him. I looked at him, I said, oh, you're an Alabama fan. He goes, oh, no, I pull for Kentucky. And I almost laughed in his face. But for some of y'all not going to like this. Clemson is way more talented by roster than Kentucky. You'd never known it by the outcome of the game. So, leave me your thoughts. What can Clemson learn from Kentucky about playing Georgia? Because, hey, remember, if we make it to the playoff, for whatever reason, whether the schedule is just that bad, ACC's terrible, or whatever reason, we actually improve, Clemson cannot hide from the top-tier teams that would not hide from them. Tell me your thoughts. Leave in the comments. I'm going to get over here to the comment section. I want to say hello. Get over here real quick. Andy Alcon, Wolfpack fan first in the watch party. Good to see you, my friend. I will be talking about the Clemson NC State game probably tomorrow. It's good to see you. John Dries, good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. NC State having a good year. I'm excited to play them. Kerry Carson, go big. Orange. Stebo, Indian Land, South Carolina. Good to see you, my friend. The problem with Stoops is that he stays conservative even when time is running out and his team is behind. That was an interesting set of events there at the end of the game. But still, he played them closer than I've seen anybody else play them other than beat them. Still gamble. They showed up against UGA and played scared. Nothing really complex about it, in my opinion. Still gamble, you're 100% correct. Thank you so much. Yeah, you nailed it. You're calling bullcrap on him not caring about Georgia. Someone had a poor offensive play, 3rd and 17, called a bubble screen. Hey, Dwight, I'm with you. Bo Evil, good to see you, my friends. Good to see you, my buddy. How would Clemson fare in the current SEC? If we didn't get our philosophy on coaching better, we would be bad right now. 100%. UGA looked awful on Saturday, 1-point win over Kentucky, but beat Clemson by 31. What does that say about Tater football? And Lord Sweeney tells me y'all ain't that good either. I tell you this, SEC dog, it tells me that Clemson, that's why that's one of the reasons I have this channel, is to talk about Clemson football in an honest approach versus whatever other approach is out there. I haven't forgot that loss from a few weeks ago. There's a lot more questions that are brewing for me than there are answers. And once again, if there's anyone who is like, hey, look, I just watch the games, I pull for my team, but I really have no expectation for them. Okay, I get that. If you're someone who's actually looking at this game in a logical, reasonably critical way, there's a lot more questions with Clemson football than there are answers. And beating a Sun Belt school that's normally good, that I have a lot of respect for, by 5,000 points and setting offensive records the week after you couldn't even get 200 yards against Georgia in a game that the eyes of the nation and recruits, by the way, we don't use the transfer portal. Recruits were watching that game. They were watching that game. Not a good look. My old buddy Parker Henderson. See that Parker's in here? Howdy, my friend. He's a member. He's a member and supports monthly. That's the symbol beside his name, that little circle with the weird whatever that is in there. That lets you know that Parker supports on a monthly basis. Parker, thank you for supporting the channel on a monthly basis. If you want to, no pressure, $3 or $5 per month. There's a join button below the video. Unless you're on an iPhone, you won't see that. Got Cohen Pope in here. Good to see you, Cohen Pope. Folks, leave your comments below the video. Let me know what you think. And, of course, I will be talking about NC State and Clemson this week. There's a lot of questions here. Clemson does not need to be conservative against NC State, but I don't think they have to completely open up the playbook unless the game is staying close. We'll talk about that and more. As always, I look forward to connecting with you, and go Tigers.